Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you've been with us for a while, you know the drill. Usually, I'm sitting here and I'm just surrounded by this fortress of paper. We've got articles, academic journals, maybe a super dense nonfiction book that I've spent the whole weekend just highlighting until the pages practically bleed neon yellow.
And the goal is always to take that mountain of information and, well, distill it.
Exactly. Turn it into something you can actually use. But today the vibe is entirely different. The whole studio feels different.
It's a huge departure from our standard operating procedure, a massive one.
Because today the source material isn't some dusty document.
Oh.
It's a guest.
We're usually in the business of interpretation, Yeah. Reading between the lines of a text.
Right.
Today we're in the business of translation. And not just language, but cultural translation. We aren't just analyzing a topic. We are analyzing an entire civilization.
Exactly. And I really want to set the stage for you, for the listener right now. I need you to suspend your disbelief. Just for the next hour, put your cynicism aside.
It's a big ask, but it's worth it.
It is. We are taking a deep dive into the societal structure of a civilization that is, and I mean this quite literally, out of this world. We're looking at a planet right here in our local system, one that started, a lot like Earth.
Yeah.
Same basic biological building blocks.
It took a drastically different evolutionary turn.
A completely different path. And instead of me just summarizing some dry report about them, we went right to the source. Joining us today is a visitor from a very specific continental nation on this neighboring world. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Thank you. It is a privilege to be here. I have observed your world with great interest, and I am pleased to have the opportunity to share the history and the culture of my own people.
The privilege is all ours, believe me. I have to say, right off the bat, and I think I'm probably speaking for a lot of our listeners who might be expecting some, sci-fi trope, you look remarkably human. I mean, if I passed you on the street in Manhattan or London, I wouldn't do a double take. You're tall, yeah. You have what I'd call a healthy glow, maybe a bit more poise than the average commuter, but, no antenna, no green skin.
We are cousins in the cosmic sense. We do share a common origin in the life patterns of this local universe. However, my people, and specifically those of my nation, are the result of a different blend of racial strains and, more importantly, a significantly different history of choices.
A history of choices.
We are what you might have become had your ancestors taken a few different turns at some critical crossroads in your history.
And that right there is exactly why we wanted to have this conversation. When we reviewed the briefing notes on your civilization, your government, your schools, the way you handle criminals, it felt like reading an alternate history novel. Some of it sounds like an absolute dream, and honestly, some of it sounds like a nightmare to our modern sensibilities.
And that's the key, isn't it? We aren't here to paint this picture of some magical utopia where everyone holds hands and sings.
No, not at all.
This is a real functioning civilization. It's gritty, it has very strict rules, and it has consequences. As I was going through all the background material, what really struck me is that your society seems to be the result of, extreme pragmatism. It's not idealistic in the slightest. It feels survivalist. You've made these very specific socio-political choices that prioritize competence and the survival of the group over almost everything else.
Over the individual, in many cases.
Yes.
It's a different roadmap for civilization. So let's unpack this. Let's start at the beginning. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of politics, just tell us about the place itself. You're from this continental nation. Paint us a picture.
Geographically, my home is an isolated continent. It is roughly the size of your landmass of Australia. We are a nation of approximately 140 million people.
Wow. Okay, 140 million. That's a fascinating density. That's about half the population of the United States, or roughly the population of Russia, but it's all confined to an island continent. So is that population stable, or is it growing?
It is stable. We realized long ago that reckless, unchecked population expansion leads inevitably to resource wars and a degradation of living standards. So we maintain our number.
You manage it.
Yes. But the defining feature of our land is not its size, but its isolation. We are ringed by high mountains peaks that would dwarf your Alps and surrounded by deep, treacherous oceans. For thousands of years, this geography was our shield. It protected us and allowed us to develop without constant interference from the, let us say, less progressive nations that share our planet.
I want to pause on that because the implications of that are just huge. Isolation acts as a natural incubator for culture.
Like a petri dish.
Exactly. On Earth, look at Europe or Asia, cultures are constantly bleeding into each other. Armies march back and forth. Borders shift every single century. It's chaotic. But your nation had the luxury of a closed system, a social experiment where you could work things out without someone from the outside kicking over the table every 50 years.
Precisely. And that isolation forced a very specific economic reality upon us. We had to become self-sustaining. We import nothing that is essential to our survival or our comfort.
Nothing.
Nothing essential. We cannot rely on neighbors who are, frankly, hostile to our way of life and in many ways biologically inferior in their development. The mountains provide us with massive hydroelectric power and irrigation for our arid western regions. We have achieved mastery over our own resources because we had no other choice. We look inward for our survival.
Self-sustaining and isolated. It sounds almost like a fortress civilization.
It does.
So let's talk about the people inside that fortress. You mentioned less progressive neighbors, and you hinted at biological differences. What does the average citizen of your nation look like? What's the vibe?
We are a mixed race. Predominantly, our heritage is a blend of what you might recognize as the yellow and blue races of our world. However, the distinguishing factor, the primary reason for our advanced status, is that we possess a significantly higher percentage of the violet strain than, for instance, your white races do.
Okay, for our listeners, let's try to contextualize that. In the anthropological records of this sector of space, the violet strain usually refers to a specific biological uplift. You could call it an Adamic heritage.
Okay.
It introduces higher physical vigor and greater intellectual capacity into a planetary population. On Earth, that heritage was, for a number of reasons, largely diluted over time. It sounds like on your continent, it was preserved, concentrated even.
That is a very accurate assessment. This mixture has been fortuitous. It has granted us a physical vitality that I must say I notice is often lacking here. The average lifespan in my nation is 90 years.
90. Wow.
That is roughly 15% higher than any other demographic on our entire planet.
90 years average. That is a staggering number. I have to ask, is that 90 years of, dragging yourself around a nursing home, or are we talking about 90 good, active years?
We are speaking of active, productive life. We are an industrious people. We value vigor. Because of our history of being constantly surrounded by hostile tribes and more savage nations, we developed a fierce, unyielding patriotism. We had to. Survival demanded that we be stronger, smarter, and more unified than the chaotic world that existed just outside our borders. A citizen of my nation is active, clear-minded, and working productively well into their 80s.
That creates a very specific national psychology, doesn't it? When you feel like an island of order in a vast sea of chaos, it drives this incredibly strong internal cohesion.
It's an us against the world mentality.
Exactly. And that's a powerful motivator for excellence. It stops a lot of the internal bickering because the real threat is always on the outside.
It definitely sets a vibe. Okay, so you've got 140 million people living a long time, full of energy, isolated on this continent. That sounds like a recipe for a pressure cooker. How do you organize that? I mean, on Earth, getting 140 million people to agree on a lunch order is basically impossible. How do you avoid total chaos?
It was not always orderly. We did not simply wake up one day and find ourselves in this system. We went through thousands of years of bloody, painful struggle monarchs, warlords, dictators, a board of republics. We made every mistake that is possible to make. We learned through suffering.
Sounds familiar. I think we're still in the making mistakes phase over here.
About 500 years ago, our situation was dire. We were ruled by a triumvirate of dictators. But one of them, a man of truly rare vision, saw that the system was unsustainable. He voluntarily abdicated his power.
He just gave it up.
He did, but he made a deal. He would step down only if the other, more malevolent dictators also stepped down. That singular act of sacrifice broke the political deadlock. It paved the way for a unified state. Today, we are a federation of 100 free states.
So a federation structure, that's a classic model for balancing local control with a central authority. It stops the center from becoming too heavy-handed, but it keeps all the states aligned. It's the model used by the U.S., Germany, Australia.
Yes, but our central authority is structured very differently from yours. We have a parliament, what you might call a Congress, but it is organized by function, not merely by geography. We have 3 branches of the legislature.
3 branches. Okay, this is where I really want to dig in, because your notes on this were absolutely fascinating. This isn't just a House and Senate setup. How do they break down?
The first is what we call the lower house. This is the industrial and economic body of the government. But here's the critical distinction. It is strictly divided into two separate chambers. One chamber is elected by labor, the organized workers. The other chamber is elected by capital management, stockholders, and ownership.
Wait, pause right there. So labor and capital have their own official separate rooms in the government. They aren't just, lobbying from the outside with bags of cash.
They are the government. They are integral parts of the legislative process. And here's the rule. For any economic law to pass, any law concerning wages, hours, trade regulations, both chambers must agree.
Both. So if labor wants, say, a 20% raise across the board, and capital comes back and says, we absolutely can't afford that, the bill just dies.
It dies. It cannot proceed.
Then how does anything ever get done? I mean, that sounds like a recipe for permanent, unbreakable gridlock. If I'm a union representative, why would I ever agree to a bill proposed by capital and vice versa?
Because the alternative is stagnation, and stagnation affects everyone's livelihood. You see, in our system, strikes are illegal.
Illegal.
They are viewed as acts of war against the economic health of the nation. Lockouts by capital are also illegal. But the groups have the legislative power, so they are forced to sit in a room and haggle, to compromise, until they find a number, a policy that both sides can live with.
It's actually a brilliant application of game theory. It's a Nash equilibrium. By forcing a consensus requirement, you completely remove the incentive for extremism. Well, if labor demands way too much, they get zero. The bill fails. If capital offers way too little, they also get zero. The bill fails. The only winning move for either side is the moderate middle. It institutionalizes the conflict. So instead of fighting in the streets with picket signs, they're fighting in a chamber with amendments and counterproposals?
Precisely. It turns class warfare into a business negotiation. It removes much of the emotion and replaces it with arithmetic. If labor tries to destroy capital, the law fails. If capital tries to exploit labor, the law fails. They must find the middle ground to function.
Forced cooperation. I like it. I really like it. So no gridlock allowed, or at least the gridlock hurts everyone equally, so they're incentivized to fix it. Okay, what's the second house?
The upper house. This body represents the social and political groups, the various professional organizations, doctors, teachers, engineers, social service groups, and so on.
Ah, so they handle the non-money stuff.
Correct. They handle the societal laws, things unrelated to pure economics, civil rights, education standards, public health codes, things of that nature.
So you cleanly separate the money decisions from the social decisions. That's a very clean division of labor. It prevents economic pressure from totally dictating social policy, which is a problem we see all the time. But I know from our research that the third house, that's the one that's going to really surprise people.
Yes. The third house is the house of elder statesmen.
The elders. This sounds like something out of a fantasy novel. Who are they? Who gets to be an elder?
They are the most experienced, most tested citizens we have. To sit in the third house, you must be over 75 years old.
75. So it's a requirement of age.
It is a requirement of age and of merit. They are not elected by the general public. They are selected by the regional executives based on a lifetime of distinguished public or professional service. And their power is very specific, but it is absolute. They hold the veto power over war and peace.
This is the genius of the system if you really think about it psychologically. On Earth, wars are so often started by middle-aged politicians with burning ambition or by young revolutionaries with fire in their bellies.
Yeah, that's true.
You take the power to send young people to die, and you take it completely out of the hands of the ambitious. You give it to the people who are past ambition, who've seen it all, who have nothing left to prove.
Exactly. They have no political careers left to build. They are beyond the sway of public passion, or what you call the rashness of youth. If the lower and upper houses both want war, perhaps swept up in a moment of national anger or jingoism, the elders can simply say no, and that is the end of the matter.
So the people who have seen it all are the ones who get to hit the brakes. That changes everything. It completely neutralizes the hot-headedness of a younger administration. I can just imagine a scenario. The industrial house wants war to secure some new resource. The social house wants war for some ideological reason. They both pass the bill with flying colors. It goes to the elders, and a 90-year-old man who actually remembers the horrors of the last war just stamps veto on it.
That is exactly how it functions. It has kept us out of any offensive wars for over a century. We defend ourselves, yes, vigorously, but we do not seek conflict. The elders will not allow it. They value peace because they know the cost of war better than anyone.
That leads perfectly into the next question. Leadership. Who's actually running the show day to day? You have a president, a prime minister.
We have a chief executive, yes. But again, the rules are different. The term is for 6 years, and you can only serve one term.
One term. Just think about the implications of that. No campaigning for re-election while you're supposed to be working.
Right.
On Earth, a president spends the first 2 years learning the job and the next 2 years campaigning to keep it. It's an enormous waste of focus and energy.
Re-election is technically possible, but the threshold is so extraordinarily high, requiring a massive, near-unanimous consensus of the state legislatures, that it is virtually impossible. The executive spends 6 years governing, not campaigning. And they are not alone. They are advised by what we call a super cabinet.
A super cabinet. Okay, I'm intrigued. Who's in that?
All living ex-chief executives.
Oh, wow. So you don't just like retire and go paint landscapes or write your memoirs. You stay on the payroll.
You stay in service to the nation. You cannot simply walk away with decades of invaluable experience. The current executive has immediate, constant access to the collective wisdom of everyone who has ever held the job before them. They meet regularly to discuss policy.
It creates a continuity of government that we often lack. It prevents that reinventing the wheel problem that happens every time a new administration comes in and purges the old staff. But I think the most striking difference isn't just how they govern, but how they get there. You can't just wake up one morning, decide you're famous enough, and then run for president, can you?
Absolutely not. That would be considered absurd. Governing is a profession. It is as technical and as demanding as medicine or engineering. You would not let an untrained person perform surgery on you, would you?
No, of course not.
So why would you let an untrained person run the nation?
That is a very, very fair point, even though it completely flies in the face of our whole anyone can be president dream. So what's the path? How do you get qualified?
We have schools of statesmanship. If you wish to hold a local office, a mayor, a council member, you must graduate from a regional school. If you wish to hold a national office, you must possess a graduate degree in statesmanship from our central university. You must be certified as competent to govern.
This creates a technocracy, essentially. It's a government run by experts. It prioritizes competence far above charisma.
So no celebrities running for president just because they're famous. No reality TV stars.
Fame is irrelevant. Competence is everything. If you have not studied economics, history, sociology, and public administration at an advanced level, you are simply not qualified to lead. We view politics as a science, not as a popularity contest.
And it connects right back to that theme of survival we talked about at the beginning. A society that feels it's surrounded by enemies can't afford incompetent leaders. It's a luxury they simply don't have. It raises the standard for public service. It makes it an intellectual pursuit, not just a power grab.
I want to pivot now. We've talked about the capital city and the structure of power. Let's move from there to the living room. Because your government reaches right into the home in a way that might make some of our listeners, especially the libertarians among them, start to sweat a little. Let's talk about this idea of a parental license.
We believe that the home is the primary educational institution of any society. Character is built at home, skills are built at school. Therefore, the quality of the parents directly determines the quality of the nation.
You can't just have kids?
You can, biologically.
Yeah.
We do not police conception in that sense. But legally, and more importantly, socially, you must be prepared. We have schools of child culture. Attendance is compulsory for both prospective fathers and mothers. You must learn how to raise a child before you are entrusted with one.
That is a heavy statement. Most people here would say parenting is a natural, fundamental right. It's the most private thing a person can do.
Biologically, yes, it is private. But socially, that child will interact with my child. That child will one day vote, work, and perhaps commit crimes in my community. Therefore, the community has a vested interest in that child's upbringing and competence. And that begins with competent parents.
This is the externalities argument, but it's being applied to human beings. You know, if you build a factory that pollutes the river, the government steps in because your private action has a public cost.
Right.
You're arguing that if you raise a child who is psychologically damaged or ethically bankrupt, you are polluting the social stream.
That is a harsh metaphor, but it is accurate.
Yeah.
We teach prospective parents nutrition, child psychology, ethics, and educational techniques. Fathers are required to be just as involved as mothers. It is a shared responsibility.
Okay, walk me through this school. Is this like a weekend seminar, a pamphlet you read before you leave the hospital?
It is a rigorous, lengthy training. It takes time. And if you do not pass the examinations, if you cannot demonstrate the patience, the knowledge, and the emotional stability required to raise a citizen, you're looked down upon.
And what if you fail? Say, I'm great at the biology part, but I failed the patience section of the exam. Can I not have kids?
You can still have them, but you may be subject to state supervision. More powerfully, it creates a tremendous social pressure. To be an unlicensed parent is to be seen as reckless, selfish, irresponsible.
That is intense. You're essentially stigmatizing untrained parenting. But this whole philosophy ties into your housing policy too, right? I read something in the notes about no apartments for families.
That is correct. To prevent overcrowding and the social diseases that come with it, crime, grime, psychological stress, we cap our cities at 1 million people. And families are forbidden from living in tenements or high-density apartment blocks. Every family must have a standalone home with a plot of land.
A plot of land? How big?
Approximately 4,600 of your square meters.
4,600 square meters? That's over an acre. For every single family. Even in a city context, that's massive. How is that possible?
It is space for gardening, for play, for privacy. We believe a family needs contact with the land to remain grounded. If you crowd humans like rats in a cage, they will eventually begin to act like rats. We give them space. And to encourage this, that home property is entirely tax-free up to a certain size.
It's a decentralized approach to urban planning. Instead of stacking people on top of each other in massive towers, you spread them out. It reduces stress, it reduces crime.
And it strengthens the family unit, which is the foundation of the state.
What about when that family unit breaks down? What's your approach to divorce?
Marriage is not permitted before the age of 20, and all couples must give a 1-year public notice of their intention to marry.
A 1-year waiting period.
Yes. We want people to be absolutely sure. As for divorce, our laws are actually quite lax. It is very easy to divorce if you truly want one.
Really? That's the opposite of what I expected. I figured you'd say it was banned given how structured everything else is.
No. But here is the result of that system. Our divorce rate is 1/10 of what I understand yours to be on average.
Why do you think that is? What's the connection?
Because people enter marriage with their eyes wide open. They are older. They are better educated from the schools of child culture, and they have had that full year of waiting and contemplation. They do not marry on a whim. So when they do finally marry, it lasts.
It's the paradox of freedom, isn't it? Make divorce easy, but make marriage intentional and difficult to enter into, and you get more stability. It's all about the preparation, not the restriction.
Let's talk about the kids growing up in these homes with these trained parents. You mentioned schools earlier. But your schools don't really look like our schools at all.
No, we do not chain children to desks for hours on end. You ask, is a school a room with rows of chairs? To us, no. Education is compulsory from age 5 to 18, but books are rare in the classroom.
Wait, no books? How do you learn anything without books?
Books are for reference, for looking up facts. Learning is for doing. Our schools are shops, farms, and laboratories. Students learn by creating. If you are learning geometry, you are not writing proofs on a board. You are building a shed. If you are learning botany, you are not looking at diagrams. You are growing crops and managing a harvest.
And I read something about the teaching model that was different.
Yes. And this is crucial. After the first 3 years of basic instruction, the older students teach the younger students.
So teaching is actually part of the curriculum.
It is the best way to learn. If you have to explain a concept to a younger child, you must first master it yourself, completely. It also fosters a deep sense of responsibility and community within the school. The 12-year-old is directly responsible for the progress of the 8-year-old in their charge.
It turns the school into a functional, self-sustaining community, not just a holding pen for children during the day. And this idea of learning by doing experiential learning is something we know is incredibly effective, but you've actually managed to scale it to a national level.
By the time a student graduates at age 18, they are a skilled artisan or technician. They can support themselves from day one. They are not released into the world helpless and filled with only theoretical knowledge. They are ready to work and contribute.
What about the curriculum itself? How do you structure the subjects?
We focus on one subject at a time. You do not juggle mathematics, history, and science all in a single day. You spend a period of weeks or months mastering one, and only then do you move to the next.
That sounds so much less stressful, just being able to focus on one thing until you actually get it.
It allows for deep focus and true mastery, and education does not stop at 18. We are a nation of travelers. Adult education is a lifelong pursuit, and people often spend their vacations traveling to other states or regions to learn new skills or study different cultures.
Which brings us to the work-life balance. You guys seem to have figured out something we are still desperately struggling with.
We operate on a 5-day week.
Okay, same as us. Not so different.
Not quite. We work for 4 of those days and we play for 1. The week is divided into periods of work, play, worship, and rest.
A 4-day work week.
Yeah.
Okay, and the hours per day.
6 hours a day.
6 hours a day. 4 days a week. That's, let me do the math here. 24 hours a week. That is almost half of what the average American works.
Yes, and our schools and industries operate for 9 months of the year. 1 month is essentially for travel and vacation for everyone.
I have to ask the economist's question here. How do you maintain national productivity with those kinds of hours? How do you compete? How do you keep the lights on?
We are highly mechanized. We long ago decided to use machines to serve us, not to use our people to serve machines. And because our people are well-trained, healthy, and focused, they are remarkably efficient. When they work, they work. There is no water cooler talk, as you call it, but when they play, they play.
And the motivation. We talked about how labor and capital have to agree on laws. Is it all just about profit at the end of the day?
The profit motive is slowly dying out among our people. It is being replaced by what we call a service motive.
That is a massive shift in cultural values. I want to push on that a little because some would say people are naturally greedy right away. How do you replace the fundamental desire for more money, more things?
We realize that chasing wealth for wealth's sake is a hollow and ultimately destructive pursuit. Wealth itself is not demonized. If you earn it through innovation and hard work, you keep it. But unearned wealth is looked down upon. Even our richest citizens work daily in their shops or offices. Idleness is seen as a vice. To be rich and do nothing is considered shameful.
So no trust fund babies just lounging around on yachts.
They would be social pariahs. They would have no respect.
And this ties directly into your tax system too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You mentioned homes are tax-free. So how does the government actually pay its bills? Governments are expensive.
We have no income tax.
Say that again for the people in the back.
There is no income tax. We consider taxing a man's direct labor to be a penalty on his industry. Why would we fine you for working hard?
Philosophically, sure, I am 100% with you, but mathematically, I'm struggling. You have schools, roads, a military, this comprehensive social insurance system. How do you possibly pay for all of that without dipping into people's paychecks?
We have 5 main pillars of revenue. But the foundation, the bedrock of our entire economy, is natural resources.
Like oil, gold, minerals.
All of it. Everything the earth yields. In many of your nations, you allow private corporations to claim ownership of the oil or the coal in the ground. They might pay a small fee or royalty to the state, but they keep the vast majority of the profit. In my nation, those resources belong to the people collectively. The government acts as a trustee, extracts them, sells them on the market, and that revenue forms the primary basis of the national budget.
Think of it like the model Norway uses with their sovereign wealth fund, or Alaska with its oil dividend, but you've scaled it up to 100% of all natural resources. The state acts as the primary corporation for resource extraction, and the profits fund the state.
We also have a very specific approach to royalties. The government heavily invests in scientific research and development. When that research leads to a valuable patent, a new type of engine, a more efficient material, the government retains a 50% interest in that patent.
So the government is basically the world's biggest and most successful venture capital firm.
In a way, if our state-funded scientists help you invent a machine that saves labor, the state shares in the wealth that machine creates. This replaces the need to tax the worker who operates the machine.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Then you have import duties or tariffs.
Yes, on non-essential goods. And finally, the inheritance tax.
Right. And that seems contradictory to me. You don't tax work, but you tax death. Why?
We tax the transfer of unearned power. We want every generation to prove itself. If you leave your son 1 billion credits, he has no incentive to work, to create, to strive. He becomes a parasite on the economy. So we tax large estates very heavily on a sliding scale up to 50% to recycle that capital back into the system and ensure the playing field is reset for the next generation.
It's the ultimate expression of a meritocracy. You can get as rich as you want while you're alive through your own efforts, but you can't create a permanent, idle dynasty that lasts forever.
And there is one final, unbreakable rule regarding our economy. The federal government is constitutionally forbidden from going into debt.
Forbidden. No deficit spending at all.
If we cannot afford something, we do not do it. Unless it is a defensive war against an invader, we do not borrow. We live within our means.
Imagine the discipline that requires. On Earth, governments borrow to cover their inefficiencies, to make promises they can't keep. Your system forces the government to be efficient. If the money simply isn't there, The program doesn't happen, period.
It sounds incredibly, almost impossibly fiscally responsible. But there's a safety net, right? What about old age? You mentioned pensions.
Yes, we have a comprehensive social insurance system, but we do not believe in charity.
Why not?
Charity, we have found, destroys self-respect. We believe in insurance. It is a right earned by citizenship, funded by the profits from our shared natural resources.
And retirement. Is there a set age?
Mandatory retirement from all gainful economic work at age 65.
Mandatory. You have to quit your job.
You must step aside to open up jobs and opportunities for the youth. You have your pension. You have your time for travel. You can enjoy the fruits of your life's labor. The only exceptions are government servants and philosophers. They may work longer if they're able.
Philosophers get a pass. I like that.
It implies they value wisdom in a different category than economic productivity, doesn't it? A philosopher gets better with age. A manual laborer might deserve a rest.
Okay, we've covered a lot of the good stuff. Short work weeks, travel, no income tax. It sounds great. But we have to pivot, because when we read about your justice system, it stopped us in our tracks. This is where the alien part of the alien visitor really comes through.
Yeah, this is the hard line. And I think we need to warn listeners, this section might be shocking to modern sensibilities. It really challenges our definitions of human rights and mercy.
So how do you handle crime?
We are pragmatic. We categorize criminals into two distinct groups, the reformable and the incurable.
And if you're deemed reformable,
You are sent to agricultural or industrial colonies. You work, you are taught a trade, you are rehabilitated. But if you are deemed incurable, if you are a habitual, serious criminal or insanely violent with no hope of a cure, we execute you.
just like that, no life in prison.
We use lethal gas. We do not believe in prisons for life sentences. Why should society pay to support a predator who will never contribute? Why should we keep them in a cage for 40 or 50 years at great expense? It is illogical. We remove them.
It's a purely utilitarian calculus. They value the safety and resources of the group over the life of the defective individual. It's cold, it's brutal, but it's consistent with their survivalist history.
It goes deeper than that. We also identify potential criminals early in life. Defectives, degenerates, those who, through genetic or developmental flaws, cannot control themselves or contribute to society. They are placed in special detention colonies. They are treated well, given work, but they are segregated by sex. They are not allowed to reproduce.
So, eugenics, you're actively preventing them from passing on their genes. That is a word that carries a lot of dark, heavy history on Earth.
We view it as societal hygiene. If a genetic line is defective, we allow it to end. I do not understand your hesitation on this point. If an animal in your herd is rabid, you do not keep it in a cage for 50 years, allowing it to suffer. You end its suffering, and you protect the rest of the pack. Why do you treat your own species with less logic than you treat your dogs?
That is a harsh way to put it, but I suppose you would argue that the results justify the means.
The result is that our homicide rate is 1% of yours. Our streets are safe. Our children are safe. We've traded the freedom of the dangerous few for the safety and security of the vast majority.
This is the fundamental trade-off. Extreme societal safety purchased at the price of individual liberty for those deemed unfit. It forces you to ask a very uncomfortable question. Is the freedom of the dangerous person worth more than the safety of the innocent? They have answered with a definitive no.
I should mention one other crime. We consider the betrayal of public trust by a government official to be the most heinous crime possible. It is considered worse than murder.
Worse than murder, really?
A murderer kills one person. A corrupt official poisons the entire nation. They face the most severe penalties our laws allow.
I think a lot of people on Earth might actually agree with you on that one.
It definitely highlights their priorities, doesn't it? The system is sacred. Betraying the system is the ultimate sin.
Let's move to voting. We talked about how you pick your leaders, but who gets to pick them? Is it universal suffrage? One person, one vote.
Voting is not a right based solely on existing. It is a responsibility that must be earned. We have a weighted voting system.
Weighted, so my vote might count more than yours.
Precisely. An average citizen gets one vote. But if you have achieved higher education, you get more votes. If you pay higher taxes, meaning you contribute more to the economic engine of the state, you get more votes. If you are a parent who has successfully raised children to citizenship, you get additional standing.
So the more you put into society, the more say you have and how it's run. Doesn't that just give all the power to the rich and the educated?
It gives more power to the contributors, yes, but there is a maximum. No one person can cast more than 10 votes. We do not want an oligarchy. We want a meritocracy.
It's meritocratic suffrage. It rewards contribution, education, and civic responsibility.
And there is a flip side to this, a disenfranchisement. If you are directly supported by tax funds, if you're a government worker, you cannot vote while you hold that office.
Whoa, hang on. Government employees can't vote. So teachers, firemen, the people working in the bureaucracy, none of them.
It is a clear conflict of interest. How can you vote impartially on the budget that pays your own salary? It prevents the bureaucracy from simply voting itself more power and more money year after year.
That is a fascinating check on power, a really powerful one. It stops the administrative state from becoming a self-perpetuating machine. It says, you can serve the state or you can direct the state, but you cannot do both at the same time.
And is voting optional? Do people have to show up?
It is compulsory. If you are a citizen who holds the franchise, you must vote. There are heavy fines if you do not. If you want the benefits and protections of the state, you must participate in its direction.
You demand a lot from your citizens.
We do, and they demand a great deal from their state in return. It is a reciprocal relationship.
Finally, let's talk about the outside world, the neighbors. You mentioned you're isolated, but you have a military.
We live on a dangerous planet. Our neighbors are not always peaceful. We maintain a strong military, but it is purely defensive. As I said, we have not launched an offensive war in over 100 years.
But you have a draft. Conscription.
We have voluntary service for youth between the ages of 18 and 30. It is a 4-year term. But it is not just learning how to shoot a weapon. They study military tactics, yes, but they also study music and culture extensively.
Music and culture in boot camp. Why?
We want to create guardians of our civilization, not just killers. A soldier who understands music and art knows what he is defending. It is not just land, it is a way of life.
And the future. You're this advanced, isolated island. Do you just plan to stay behind your mountains forever?
No. We are preparing a new initiative, a grand one. We are preparing to send missionaries to the backward nations that surround us.
Missionaries? You mean religious missionaries?
No, teachers. Cultural ambassadors. Our goal is not to conquer them with armies, but to uplift them with knowledge. We want to share our culture, our educational systems, and our methods for achieving peace. We want to raise the level of the entire planet, not just our own nation.
That's a hopeful note to end on. Uplift rather than conquest.
It's the final evolution of a secure state, isn't it? Once you are truly safe and prosperous, you finally have the luxury of looking outward to help others.
Okay, let's take a breath here.
That's
A lot.
It is a lot to process, a whole different way of looking at things.
So let's just try to recap. No income tax. Parents have to be licensed. Politicians have to be certified like doctors. Incurable criminals are removed from the gene pool. And the government is constitutionally required to run on a credit surplus.
When you lay it all out like that, you really see the pattern. This society prioritizes competence and group survival above almost all else. It's a society where freedom is defined by responsibility, not just the right to do whatever you want. They have sacrificed some things we hold very dear, like unconditional mercy for criminals or the unconditional right to have children. But in return, they have gained a stability and a longevity we can only dream of.
It's like looking at a mirror image of Earth, but one where someone went around and tightened all the bolts.
Exactly. And it forces us to ask ourselves some tough questions. Are we too loose? Are we tolerating incompetence in our leaders? Are we ignoring the long-term health of our species for our own short-term comfort and convenience?
Those are the questions every civilization must eventually answer for itself. We made our choices. You are in the process of making yours.
That is the ultimate takeaway, isn't it? We are making these choices every single day, whether we realize it or not.
And it raises an important question to leave with you, the audience. If we could adopt just one of these rules, just one from their society into ours, if you could pick the parental training, the statesman degrees, or the debt-free government, which one do you think would change our world the most?
That is the question I'm going to leave you with today. Think about it. Which one would you pick?
Choose wisely.
We'll try. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute education.
A pleasure was mine.
And thank you, as always, for taking the deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.